Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two musicians who used to play in a band together and share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. If you haven't seen the movie we're talking about, then don't worry. The first half of the episode will be pretty high level and spoiler free, and then we'll play a warning before we start talking about any major plot twists in the ending. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Well, this is it. The final week of our mini-series about the Netflix series The Haunting of Hill House.
It really feels like we went through this in almost like a week.
Yeah, it's crazy. This show has been really good so far, and I'm going to say... because I wasn't completely sold on this whole, let's review a series at first.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of sorry it's over. I've enjoyed this. Man. It's been fun.
It's been real nice. Whose idea was that?
I think was it yours?
I legit don't remember.
Oh, okay. I thought you were setting me up to compliment you.
No.
Yeah. No, I think we had actually had several people kind of recommend the idea, and then we were talking...
you know, who sparked it was actually Sarah when she was talking about Stranger Things. And then,
yeah, that's right.
Then this TV show came along. It's like, oh man, let's record.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a little sad, but the upside is that these last two episodes paid off a lot, and we have a ton to talk about. And so if you haven't been listening the past few weeks, we're doing this kind of one-off weird TV series review, which isn't what we normally do. Normally each week we'll review one horror movie, but we're doing a 5-week series where we're going through all of The Haunting of Hill House, and we're doing 2 episodes of the show per week, and this week is episodes 9 and 10. So if you haven't listened to the previous ones, now would be a good time to go back and do that. And if you have listened to the previous ones, then I'm sure you were just as excited as we were to see the conclusion, and probably had a lot of the same questions and discussion points. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, and these episodes were really dense. So what we're probably going to end up doing is breaking this episode down into a 2-parter. But we'll release them both on the same day, so you don't have to wait. But that keeps file sizes smaller, and it gives us... get a little bit easier time with the editing and stuff. So, yeah. That said, let's play the spoiler warning and get to it.
Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. If it's not obvious enough. Warning, spoilers.
Okay, so like I said before, these episodes were super dense, and I'm going to do just a really, really, really high-level summary of episode 9, and then we're going to get right into talking about it, because if I tried to give like a normal summary like I've done previous weeks, we would never get past it. So here we go.
Let's do it.
Episode 9 is the first episode that takes place entirely in 1992, and it focuses exclusively on the mom, Olivia. It ties into a lot of other scenes that you've seen throughout the series, and also explains exactly what happened on the night when Olivia died. It also gives us a lot more information about Abigail, and about the red-haired ghost who grabbed Luke at the end of episode 8. And that's all I'm going to say.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So that was the super high level, just kind of to refresh your memory a little bit, and let's get to it.
All right.
So overall impression, what do you think? So
I didn't notice at the end of episode 8 that she was actually redhead. Mm-hmm. Now you said it in our podcast, and I just went along with it.
Yeah,
because that's what I do.
I tune in and out.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought that. What was her name? It was like
Poppy.
I thought she was like extremely, extremely creepy.
She was very creepy, and she's almost one of the most, maybe the most, if not the most hateable TV character that I've seen recently.
Yeah, but she did such a good job at being hateable. Not liked.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
Not liked,
yeah, I dislike her because I was clearly supposed to, based on the story. It wasn't that she was like a bad actress or anything.
Yeah. So with episode 9, it really ties in like a lot of our questions.
Yes.
Of like what was Olivia talking. Who was she talking to when she was in the twins' room, but the twins weren't in the bed? Yeah. And like Steven, comes and talks to her. Like, who was she talking to? Like, it really clears up so much stuff. And I was very happy about that. I was not let down, for the most part with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this episode was one of, even having seen episode 10 at this point, I feel like this episode was one of the most important of the series.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because it finally established what was really driving Olivia. And the whole time, you had kind of known her from the outside. You had really seen her, like, very much cast from other people's points of view. But you didn't really have any sort of view into her head or what was going on with her. And you didn't really know if she was haunted or possessed or crazy or on drugs. There could have been any number of explanations for why she was doing what she was doing. And she'd been having those headaches and acting erratically. But then in this episode, you finally find out kind of what was driving it all. And that was the ghost, Poppy, that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was the evil one.
Yeah, and it was interesting because it was like she was very specifically tormenting Olivia, but she was doing it in a way that I'm not sure Olivia would say that she was a negative force.
Right. Like she seemed like she was trying to help.
Yeah, it's like she was planting ideas in her head about the future of her kids. And it was like as soon as that started, she started having all those visions of bad things happening to Nell and Luke in the future. And so, like, one of them was when she had the vision of Nell's body in the morgue, which we had seen in a previous episode. And then a vision of Luke overdosed and dead on the ground. And then that would just kind of continue to get more intense throughout the episode with, like, her experiences with them or her fears about them. And the whole time, Poppy is leading her down the line of thinking that these are just dreams or that these are the dreams the kids are going to have. So she needs to wake up and wake them up. But this whole asleep versus awake thing kind of ends up being a really big sort of theme in these last couple of episodes. Yeah. And you find out very early on here that it really means dying. And so Poppy is basically encouraging her to kill herself and her kids, even though she's doing it in a very, like, twisted and manipulative way. And that's what makes her so terrible. Yeah.
And so I would assume that the reason why Poppy is going after her because she's the weaker of the... Like, why not go after the dad? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that Olivia was already kind of out of it, and then this really took things to the next level. Like, I'm not really sure what relationship her headaches played to everything else, if that was something from the house, or if she was already having issues before they got there. And I'm also not sure, because it seemed like mental illness running in the family was a big piece of the show, a big piece of the plot.
Yeah.
But you didn't really hear... Well, I guess Olivia had talked about how her mom was like clairvoyant or something as well. So I think that she was more attuned to the supernatural, which we have reason to believe is true and not a symptom of mental illness, which is what other people were calling it. At least that's the way I interpreted it.
Yeah. Well, crazy. One thing that I enjoyed, which I thought was super strange, was the conversation that Olivia had with Mrs. Dudley at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
Where she's talking about her dad dying when she was 12 years old and, like, having to watch her sister, I think, and, like, it started raining rocks.
Yes.
Like, I didn't necessarily understand. Like, I figured there was probably, some sort of meaning to it. Even Miss Dudley... Yeah. Miss Dudley says, like, talk about the Book of Revelations, like, I don't know, something about stone landing. I didn't really pay attention all those years we went to church, but yeah, that you also got, like, more of a history of Olivia at that point. Like, you got to know why you would think some of these strange things are happening to her.
Yeah, it's not like she had never had supernatural experiences before she came to the house. Yeah.
And it's almost like the storm that she was talking about got worse with her emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
So it started off and she was doing okay, and all of a sudden she lost it and it started storming real bad. And
yeah. Well, and one thing that stood out to me about that, and then the conversation she had with Mrs. Dudley later in the episode, was that Mrs. Dudley was really not helping the situation. So I think that she was coming at it from like a sincere place, and she was trying to give good advice, but she was also extremely motivated by losing her first child. And so the advice that she gave to Olivia was really just fuel on top of the fire of what Poppy was already kind of planting in her, like that need to protect your children and that distrust of other people or the outside world.
Right. Yeah, it was like, it was definitely strange in that, like, it was very counter intuitive, if that's what I'm supposed to be saying here. Because, like, she had those conversations talking about, the world's terrible and all that about her kid, but then, like, it's almost like she's talking about the mom kind of losing it, and the mom catches it real quick, and she kind of backtracks and then goes, tiptoes around what she's saying, like, you need to be out of here. Like, when do you guys plan on leaving? They said, August. It'd be better if you could leave sooner. It was just like, like, she knows what's going down, and she knows that she's trying to. I think at that point, like, she couldn't just say, like, look, you're losing it, you gotta leave. Because who knew, who knows what the mom would have done at that point.
Yeah.
But who knows, with that.
Yeah, and we also find out a lot more about the Dudleys in episode 10 that kind of explains some more stuff. But yeah, and I guess one thing from a directing and sort of storytelling and way they presented the episode perspective that I really liked was how they interweave so many scenes from the previous episodes into this one. And so it was almost, because we've seen a lot of that throughout the series, but this one covered so much time. There were so many points where Olivia had done something weird in the series, and it was like you saw the other side of all of those in this episode. And the way that they kind of interweaved the time, because that was one thing too in this episode that was really interesting, was that it seemed like she was losing track of time a lot. So she would be standing there having a conversation with Poppy in one room, and then she would wake up and she would be in a different room, or she would be talking to her husband, and then all of a sudden he would be on the other side of the room holding one of the kids that had been sleeping on the couch next to her, or you know what I mean, just kind of like hopping around in time and space that way. And the way that they weaved that back into all of those scenes that we'd seen previously, I thought was just really cool. That was a really neat way of tying this episode back to all of the previous ones and making what was happening relevant to the whole story.
Yeah, it definitely does. It did.
Oh, and one thing we talked about too last week was when she sees Luke and Nell's corpse, when she's looking in the desk mirror, and then she punches it. Yes, yeah. So now we found out why. It wasn't that she saw the ghost under the thing behind her. It was that she saw another glimpse of Luke and Nell's corpses.
That's actually why I text you if you had watched episode 9 yet. That's what. And then I didn't send anything because I ended up having to do a little bit of work. But that's why I asked you. I was gonna say at least we got our answer. Yeah, we had just talked about it in episode 8. But,
that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I also really liked that you saw the clock repair guy a couple of times in the background.
Multiple times, yeah.
And she didn't even seem to notice or realize that he was there. And he had no impact on the rest of the episode. Yeah. But I just thought that was like a nice thing to put in because it kind of fit with the dad's story. So yeah,
there's that old bugger.
Yeah,
I figured I'd wondered if he would have some sort of bigger impact, but definitely didn't.
Yeah, so that's kind of a big part of the episode, and a lot of the setup was talking about the mom and how she was sort of going further and further into being haunted or being crazy or however you want to put it, but with Poppy really getting in her head and making her more desperate and scared. And so at one point after a conversation, like an intense conversation with Poppy while she's either dreaming or whatever's happening, she wakes up and she's holding the screwdriver to Hugh's neck. And that was a scene that we had seen previously, but that sort of spurred him to suggest very heavily that she needed to leave early and go see her sister.
Right.
And spend a few days outside of the house to kind of get her bearings.
Mm-hmm.
So then I feel like the next big sequence happens when she goes to leave but doesn't go and then comes back.
Yeah, so she goes to bed. You already know she's lost it, obviously, because she just woke up on her husband's lap, or straddling her husband with a screwdriver, and he says something like, "You're holding, or why did you hold a screwdriver in my throat?" And she's like, "No, I didn't. I did not." Like she was just completely out of it.
Yeah.
But in a way, that was kind of a good thing because it sparked the conversation of having her leave sooner. Like, let's get you out of here now.
Yeah.
Because they had mentioned something like right before that she was going to be gone in a couple days.
Right.
Like on Monday. And I think it was like a Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
But anyway,
it was a few days.
They pushed it up a few days.
Yeah.
And so you start to feel a little relaxed because the mom gets in the taxi and leaves, but then you find out that she just goes to the same hotel room or goes to the same motel that
Hugh ends up taking the kids to later. Yeah.
That brought the kids to, and that Nell stayed in when she came back. And it's just like it all was just a full circle at that point. As soon as you saw her at the hotel room, you're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
this isn't good.
Yeah, that was dark because she calls, to check in and see how things are going.
Yeah.
And the house is just crazy, like as you can imagine it would be when there are 5 kids and 1 adult, and it's kind of going wild. And Hugh's trying to, get dinner ready or whatever, and she's talking to him and says that she's at her sister's house, but is clearly not. And then at night, she's come back, and you see that she's starting to make the tea, and there was a bottle next to it that I recognized, as the rat poison from the episode when Hugh was trying to kill the rats. Yeah. And honestly, like, my stomach just turned when I saw that, because that was the moment where, like, she's stopped fighting it and completely given into, like, that crazy line of thinking about being destructive towards the kids.
Yeah. And they pointed out, like, every time it showed the rat poison, it did, like, kind of a creepy zoom into it almost.
Yeah. They were making it very obvious.
Yeah, it was extremely obvious that was going to have a play in something, but I didn't expect it to be, poisoning her kids, Yeah. Yeah, and then it has additional significance in episode 10 as well, but we'll get to that. So yeah, but anyway, so she makes the poison tea and then goes up to Luke and Nell's room, and I thought it was like unintentionally funny, or maybe it was intentionally funny, but when she walks in and she sees Abigail in the bed, and she's like, "Who are you?" Yeah, exactly.
He's just like, "I've been telling you all for 6 episodes about my friend Abigail, and no one believes me." But then she invites the 3 of them into the red room for a tea party, and they walk towards the room, and Nell talks about them not having the key, and she says, "Oh, we are the key," and that was an intense moment because this episode didn't do a lot to explain the red room, but that was kind of more the focus of episode 10. But that was really an interesting setup because it meant that there was something in that room beyond just physical constraints that was keeping them out before. And that becomes an important plot point later. But it also, the room is full of that black mold that we've now seen in several different scenarios that involve, like, haunting or supernatural activity. So there's something going down. There's something bad about that room. And when she takes them in there with the tea, like, it's going to get bad.
Yeah, and that was so intense. Like, as soon as they get into the room and they're down with the tea, like, you know that the rat poison's in there. And by this point, Steven, or Cheryl had woken up, saw the mom in the kitchen with the notice, that she was acting weird.
Yeah, that was really creepy. The actress that played Olivia did a really good job in that scene.
Yeah, man. Like, she did a very good job. And so the oldest daughter woke up her dad. Her dad was chasing to find the mom, realizes that the kids are out and that they're in the red door room. And I don't know, just that whole build up, like, it was almost like you're holding your breath because it was just so tense.
Well, and like the way that just the whole everything about it, Abigail drinks first and then starts choking, and the other kids are freaking out, and the mom's telling them not to worry and to just drink up. But Hugh gets there just in time to save them and knocks it off the table. And then he and Olivia get in a fight, and he ends up shoving her against the wall, and she hits her head and it knocks her out. And just all of that, like, you're on edge for every minute of it. And it's interesting because that's not really what the series has been about for the most part, like physical violence and struggle. But that's very much what that scene was. Like, it was very real, you're about to die type danger.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was good because it explained the police report that Steve had mentioned in the last episode, where he talked about, like, the mom's hurt ankle and the bruise on the back of her head and stuff. And so this is giving, like, a plausible explanation for all of that. That's not, spousal abuse. It's not any of the other theories that anyone's had. It's he was fighting to save his kids. And so it wasn't, because I feel like a lot of the series had been ambiguous about what you were supposed to think of Hugh.
Yeah. And
I think that this really painted him in a much better light by explaining that.
Yeah. And it also, it also, explains why it was all sounded so muddy. And it's because, there was a little bit of a cover up at the end, which we'll get in. I think that was episode 10 when it came out about that. But it's just it was just as spotty as he thought. But after he pushed her and knocked her out. It wasn't like he was pushing her to knock her out. It was really he was pushing her because they had, like, this agreement, to take care of the kids. She was. They had made that comment about, I don't know, something about. Yeah.
She was a real and physical threat to the children at that point, which was
And so when she's knocked out, that's the time where you find out where Hugh wakes up the rest of he wakes up Steven and Theo. Yeah. They're all sitting in the entry of the house by the stairs. He goes and picks up Steven, and then they get out of there.
Yeah.
But it explains when he's picking up Steven and he goes into Steven's room, it shows, like, at the very beginning of the episode where that happens,
where the doorknob was turning.
Yeah. So it shows, like, he looks up and he just sees all the ghosts. All the ghosts are just out at this point. Like the bowler hat dude, like the Poppy, just they're all out. And he's just like, nope.
Yeah.
Not Like, literally, I think that's what he said, was just like, nope.
Yeah.
And just turned, went and got Steven.
Yeah.
The other kids are in the car. And during this time, the mom wakes up and she's trying to find him. And it almost seems like she's clear-headed at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she realizes that it's not a dream. And so I feel like she's legit trying to find him. And you find out that the person who, when Hugh goes in to get Steven and he shuts the door and locks it, the person who was twisting the doorknob slowly was the mom, Olivia, trying to find Hugh. Not in a malicious way, but because he saw all the ghosts before, he was like, screw that, I'm not opening that door, understandably.
Well, so something I thought was just really, really interesting was what happened right after that. So the reason she leaves the door is because she hears another ghost calling to her from down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes in and sees the old woman in the bed who is like warning her about Poppy and calling her a liar.
Like she literally goes, she's a liar.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that was interesting to me because up until this point,
Poppy is a liar.
Yeah. I'd at least had the impression that the ghosts were all like working together.
Right.
But that means like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
And so they are just kind of disorganized in their individuals and they're all out for different things in the house. And so I thought that was a really interesting twist that told us a lot more about how the house works.
Yeah. Yeah. You start to find out that, why the ghosts are there in the first place, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was actually like, I laughed when I heard old lady say Poppy is a liar.
Yeah.
And like she was back in the bed and I think the mom asked for like a favor or something, didn't she? Olivia? Didn't she say something like, can I ask you a question? Or I don't know. It was something where like the old lady like seemed like she was legit trying to help in a way. Like
not malicious or evil presence.
Yeah. And then that's when Poppy shows back up.
Mm-hmm.
So, Hugh gets Steven out in the car. Poppy shows up when the mom looks out and sees the family driving off.
Yeah. Basically
saying like, he took your kids away from you. He took it all away from you.
Yeah.
And that's like almost when she switches back into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so, at that point she knows that she's killed Abigail. She's like physically hurt and her kids and husband have run away and she doesn't have any reason to think they're coming back. And then Poppy is there just like overwhelming her with these thoughts of the kids are out there in the world. He's taking them away from you. He's sending them to their death. You need to wake up. You need to wake them up. And then all of a sudden she kind of, in a similar way to Nell, just finds herself like on the other side of the railing.
Yeah.
And then it was interesting because like Poppy pushed her hand forward like she was going to push her off, but she didn't even touch her and she just like fell off the landing to her death. So
right on her face.
Yeah, that was a really sad sequence, I thought.
Yeah, it was extremely sad. And then that's when the episode ends, right? Or does it end when Hugh comes back in?
So Hugh doesn't come back. What happens after that is it flashes back even further to when they first arrive at the house.
Right. Oh,
and then it's like super happy and all the kids are there and she and Hugh are happy together. And she says something like, go on without me because he's going to go help the kids unpack or something. And he's like, we could never go on without you. And then like, that she's dead. So that was a really kind of dark and sad ending. But yeah. But one other thing that stood out to me a lot with this one was, or two things, I guess. One is just that whole idea of dreaming and waking up. And that's interesting to think about from a ghost perspective. It gets more into it in the next episode, but if ghosts perceive time differently, then it kind of makes sense that they would see people who are alive as like short-sighted or somehow less like awake to reality or time or something.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to think about. Just because of the phrasing of it. It seemed very deliberate because it kept coming up throughout so many of the episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, this episode, man.
Yeah. And then I also really liked that they replayed the car driving away and Steven seeing the mom's ghost in the window of the house. Because that was something that became important in sort of the final, the grand reveal of everything in episode 10. So, yeah, they did a good job of sort of reminding you of all the things you needed to be reminded of for the next episode to really hit home.
And I think that they did a really good job at making episode 9 about what happened to the mom, because that was so important to the series. Yeah. And then at the end of that, you're like, okay, well, now what happens to the family now that they're all showing back up in the house?
Yeah. Well, and that... like we had mentioned before, what happened to the mom was kind of the central mystery to the whole story. Yeah. And so this kind of delivered that. What it didn't deliver, though, was information about, like, what's going on, like, what the hell is the Red Room, and why is the house still standing, and how did Hugh not get arrested for murder because, like, someone murdered a child in his home and no one's talked about that for the last 9 episodes. So, yeah. But anyway, at this point, to our listener, we have some good news and some bad news. Bad news.
This was all a dream.
Wake up.
We didn't even do one podcast. You're dead, you dummy.
Wake up. We've been dead the whole time.
Yay.
Just like Haley Joel's career. So, the bad news is we have to stop here for time considerations. But the good news is that the next episode is already available, so feel free to move on and listen to that. It'll be titled something along the lines of The Haunting of Hill House, episodes 9 and 10, part 2. So come back and listen to us talk about episode 10, and we will rejoin you shortly.
BRB right back.
Well, actually, I guess it's their decision how shortly, but anyway.
Yeah, it's your own fault if you don't listen to us immediately.
It'll be kind of funny if there's like 1,000 downloads of the first episode and like 2 of the second.
Yeah, we offended so many people.
Ain't nobody got time for this.
No.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.